Hey guys, welcome back to our Python programming series. We will continue this series on our decision making, and we'll go ahead and talk about the last thing within the decision making is called your nested if statement. So as the name kind of indicates, as like nested if statement, so there may be a situations if one condition is true and you really want to check another thing within that condition, within that if construct, or even within else side the else construct, you can make use of these nested if statement. So as the name kind of indicates, in a nested if construct you can have an if else elif construct inside another if elif construct. So basically you would go ahead and define your regular if else or elif, and within those if or elif or else you can again have another set of condition. You can probably have a if and then elif and then probably an else condition. So if you have to quickly take a look at the syntax would be something like this. We'll have an if condition where we are checking some expression, and if that expression is true, we are executing certain line of code, and after executing those certain line of code, we can again go ahead and introduce another if expression. So that means this if expression will only be checked if the first expression was true. That means if this first expression is true, hey, you do something and then potentially check for another expression. Again, it really depends on you. If you don't want to execute a certain line of code, if the first expression is true and you really want to go ahead and check another expression, you can go ahead and do that. And within that expression, you will have again certain line of a code that you want to execute potentially. For this if, you might have another elif. You can go ahead and make use of that. It's not necessarily that you need to use elif. Again, if you see for this if, you have an else also. Again, this is again optional. If your program really desire you to have a if, elif, else, or multiple elif, it's up to you. But this is just a syntax. It shows, okay, hey, this is how you can make use of. And then for this if, we have an elif statement. Okay, hey, if this expression was not true, you try checking this expression. And again, if you want within this elif, you can also go ahead and do another if, else if, and else statement. For the first if, now we have the else statement. So that's called your nested if. So basically, just to repeat one more time, you can have if else statement with inside another if else statement. That's the whole idea. If you want to check multiple expression, hey, if the first expression is true, you want to verify a few more things, you could go ahead and simply make use of that program. So just to demonstrate that, let's say we want to write a program where we would like to see if a given number is a positive number or it's a negative number, and at the same time we want to see is the number entered is neither positive nor negative. Let's say that means somebody has entered a number 0. So far we have been declaring variable where we have been giving a fixed value. So if you want to take an input from the user, you could make use of the another function that we will go ahead and also learn in this exercise. It's called your input function. So now let's go ahead and declare a variable x, and instead of giving x as a fixed value, we can ask for an input from the user. So we can use of the input function, and as you can say, IntelliJ really says, okay, hey, input, and you can go ahead and write a prompt. So now go ahead and enter a message that you want a user to see, enter a number. And once a user enters a number, let's say we want to convert that number into a float or an integer or anything that you desire, I can go ahead and simply make that number an integer number. So I can do the casting. So that means, hey, whatever the user enter, that digit, convert that digit into an integer and store the resulting value inside the variable x. So that's how you get an input from the user using the input function. So now we have a value, or we have a number which is entered by the user. So now we need to decide the value of x. Is it a positive number, or is it a negative number, or is it a number 0? So we know anything which is greater than equals to 0 are your positive numbers. Anything less than 0 are your negative number. But if the number is 0, it's neither positive nor negative, we will just simply go ahead and say it's a 0. So that means we can go ahead and verify a few things here. So now let's use our first expression. We are checking, hey, if x is greater than equals to 0. That means we are verifying, okay, if the value of the variable x is either greater than 0 or is equals to 0, that means one of the statement or one of the expression is definitely true. Either x has a value of 0 or either x value is greater than 0. So we can now verify again the first thing, okay, hey, that means if this expression is true, that means potentially x is either equals to 0 or x has a value which is greater than 0. So now we can verify here again. If, hey, now check if x is really equals to 0. So to equals to 0 to compare, we can use the equal operator where we are verifying, okay, hey, check is x is equals to 0. And if that's the case, then we just simply say you entered 0. If the value of x is not 0, that means we definitely know the value of x is greater than 0. Why? Because the first expression checks that. The first expression has greater than equal. That means if the x is not 0, that means x is probably greater than 0, and that means x is a positive number. So for this if statement, we can go ahead and make use of the else, because we are not testing any other condition here. So that's why we are not making use of the else if or elif here. So we just simply say else, and I can go ahead and say simply here entered number is a positive number. That's all. Now, but if I go ahead and go back to my previous if expression, we were verifying, okay, hey, is x greater than equal 0? There is a good possibility the value of x is neither 0 nor greater than 0. It could be potentially less than 0. That means somebody has entered a negative number. So that means for this if, we can go ahead and say, okay, hey, else. So that means if this value was not greater than or equal to 0, that means definitely the value of x was less than 0. That means the number entered by user is a negative number. So we can say here entered number is a negative number. So if you take a look here, we had our first block of if else. So if you see within the IntelliJ, it shows these kind of bars, and also if I go ahead and click this, it kind of collapsed this code. That means within this if, we have few more line of a code. If I go ahead and expand this, it says the first expression. So within this if, we are making use of another if and else, and that is nothing, just simply called as a nested if statement. So an if statement inside another if statement. So that is your nested if. So if I go ahead and execute this program and see what happens, the system on the bottom of the screen is expecting a number input from us. So it says enter number. So let's go ahead and enter number 10. And when I enter 10, it says entered number is a positive number, because what happened? We are verifying is x has a value of 10. We are verifying is 10 greater than equals to 0, and the statement is true. So that means this expression was true. Now within this if, we have another if where we are verifying, hey, is 10 equals to 0? No, 10 is not equals to 0. So we came inside this else block of code where we went ahead and simply printed this message saying entered number is a positive number. Now let's go ahead and rerun this program. Now this time we go ahead and enter 0, and the message says you entered 0. So what happened? We are verifying, is 0 greater than equals to 0? Yes, this expression is true, because x has a value of 0 which is equals to 0. So now we are inside this if expression. Now we are verifying here, okay, hey, is 0 equals to 0? And that's the case. Yes, x has a value of 0 in this case, and we went ahead and simply said, okay, hey, you entered 0 here. Now let's go ahead and simply rerun this program, and this time we say minus 10, and the output says entered number is a negative number, because what happened in this case, we are verifying is negative 10 greater than equals to 0. That's not the case. Negative number is not greater than equals to 0. That means we came down to this else block of code within this main if, and we went and simply printed this message that says enter number is a negative number. So hopefully you get the idea behind using the nested if statement. So if you want to make use of multiple statements or multiple nested if statements, else statements, you can go ahead and make use of that. And that'll be all. That kind of covers all the different combinations within the Python that are available to us in terms of the decision making using the if, else, elif keyword. And we will continue to use this decision making as we further progress into this series. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next episode.